I'm your host, Phil Wagner, and today I'm super excited. We've got Robert Brown, a retired four-star Army general, last served as the commanding officer at U.S. Army Pacific. And U.S. Army Pacific is the largest service component. It's responsible for over 100,000 soldiers. And after more than 38 years in uniform, General Brown now serves as the president of the Association of the United States Army, AUSA. He's also a 1981 graduate of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. We were chatting before. He also played basketball under Coach K. Now, a crucial aspect of leadership we haven't talked about is creating a strategic advantage. And before we introduce and talk with General Brown, I want to read a quote from him. Material solutions alone will not provide the decisive edge against the complex array of rapidly adapting threats we face. To answer the challenge of this new paradigm, the Army must invest in its most valuable resource, its people. So I want to thank and welcome General Brown to the podcast today.
Well, thanks, Phil. It's great to be here, and really appreciate those. You just got me excited. That introduction there. There's some great topics, and I always love talking about leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we got a chance to chat a little bit before. I mean, how important it is to invest in leadership, and to you, just reading through and talking with you, the empowering and mentoring subordinates keeps coming up as like a key piece to the success, not only the Army, but of any organization.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's interesting. People are out there always looking for the solution, the technical solution that will do everything. But the reality is nothing. I don't care, artificial intelligence, nothing will ever replace an empowered leader on a trusted team. That's unstoppable, and you have that. I get a kick out of you always read about, oh, someday humans won't even be involved. There'll be machines doing everything, and that machines will do a lot. Artificial intelligence is important. Don't get me wrong, but all of that leads to really it's going to be the investment in people and human beings to make those key decisions. And with AI, they can make those decisions faster and perhaps more accurately. But it definitely is going to all really revolve around leadership and people being able to come together as a trusted team to accomplish a task in any field, really, across the board. It used to be, it's interesting, when I was a lot younger, maybe 20 years ago, the challenge was not enough information. You're trying to get things done, and you only have a few pieces of information. And in some ways, that was a heck of a lot easier to have take initiative and do things, because you could have a more, a leader who kind of felt like they knew it all, and you didn't know any better because you didn't have that much information, and created a fog of war in business and military and sports. That was a lack of information. And so, taking the initiative was not that hard, because nobody's going to second guess you. You're going to do the best you can. You only have a few pieces of information. Well, now you look today, the fog of war, the challenge out there is too much information, right? How all overwhelmed. And so when you have too much information, overwhelming amounts, you cannot be as effective if you're not empowering others, and if you haven't built that trust in an organization. And then when you do take the initiative, it's a lot harder, because you will be second guessed. People will come back and say, well, you knew these 10 things, but you don't realize you had literally thousands of pieces of information. You're trying to find that, golden needle in the haystack of information. It's difficult. And you've got to have an organization that can leverage technology, leverage all the many ways to get that information, and then make better decisions faster from that.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you talk a lot about speed, decisions and all this information. And a lot of times empowering has become kind of a cliched term, empower your people. But when you talk, what I hear is what it means, and correct me if I'm wrong to you, is empowering your people means they're able to make the decisions, right? And if they're able to make decisions, you can move and adapt at a more rapid rate.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But also, I think sometimes people will think, I know in organizations I've led, there's individuals that think empowerment means, okay, here you go, Phil, do whatever you want to do. I'm empowering you. I'm not going to oversee what you do. I'm not going to no, 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 not at all. You have to know your people. And, some are very experienced and you can empower them a lot.
Mm.
Some less experienced, maybe you don't empower them quite as much until they get the hang of it. So you have to know your people and you do empower them to do their job and you help them. But however, they're different experience levels and the trust is key for everyone. But also they need to understand, if you have brand new individuals, never been in a leadership position, maybe a little less empowering and a little more coaching and mentoring is required. And then you one who's just superb and so you don't need as much coaching and mentoring. You empower them and you give them more free reign, if you will. So there are levels. It doesn't mean just go do whatever the heck you want to do. You still
Right.
have vision for the organization and you're all moving in the same basic direction or you're not going to succeed. Yeah.
So in a way, it's almost like as a leader, you've got to have this decision tree in your head of understanding what level of empowerment or flexibility you're giving your subordinates, to make these kinds of decisions.
Absolutely. And I do find some individuals find that hard. They're not quite sure, it requires a lot of effort to get to know folks,
Mm.
really. And that sounds funny, but like you mentioned, when I had about 126,000 individuals in my last command, I can't know every one of them, but the leaders, the key leaders at the right, the levels below me with the authority, I had to know extremely well. And yeah, it's a lot of folks, but you've got to put in the effort to really get to know them. And in doing that, you're working together and you're building that trust as well. And then you'll have a very successful organization that can work at a rapid pace with the speed required. You really kind of outthink, outmaneuver your adversary, whether that's another competitive business or whether that's somebody that's trying to do you harm or whatever.
Yeah, and how do you get to know those people and start to assess what type of level of empowerment, do you feel comfortable giving them, right? Because there's obviously some exploration that goes on, and folks are going to have to fail a little bit, but you also can't fail. Talking with Bezos, he calls them type one decisions, one that will sink an organization.
Yeah.
You want to be careful of those type one versus a type two decision, right?
Yeah, no doubt. That's a great question. And it requires your most precious asset as a leader, time.
Mm.
Best time and visiting them, developing them, building the team, no question about it. And what I find sometimes people just take that for granted. Well, I don't need to build a team. We just automatically are a team. No, no, you've got to spend a lot of time. And of course, building a team, you do a lot of activities where you build trust and you show them they can fail. And I've had that situation actually multiple times in combat in the most tense situations, critical situations where I've empowered an individual and what they did not work out. And my superior boss I would work for at different levels, they would come down and say, "Hey, wait a minute, Captain so and so just failed," and they want to take severe action and punish them. And it's like, wait a minute, wait a minute, you do that, we won't have any innovation at
Right.
all. You've got to accept not anything illegal, immoral, unethical, but where they're trying to do the right thing, they take the initiative, it doesn't work out. You've got to support that, or you'll stifle innovation, you'll break trust, and you've got to, as the leader, uh, take the blame when it goes poorly, and give the credit when it goes well. Give the credit to them, and so you devote that time. And I do agree with as you were saying, you know, that there are certain things that you can't fail. And that's true. When a lot of lives are at stake, et cetera, you practice, you train, you do everything you can, and you spend more time to avoid that fail. You fail early when it doesn't matter, not late,
Mm.
and prepare properly. You can usually avoid that, but sometimes, you do all you can, you're still going to fail because, when you're in tough situations, the other The enemy gets a vote, the adversary, whether it's a company, they get a vote. It's not a perfect world, and so you got to be ready. But failure is a whole nother thing we could probably talk about for hours of how important it is to be able to fail, to build trust, but then how important it is to learn from that failure and not repeat it. But it can't be a terminal thing if you fail. You can't succeed without failing.
Right, right, right. And are there certain activities you found to be more helpful that, when you're working with mentoring, younger leaders, subordinates, how, to put them in that position um, to fail, but not, you know, ultimately put others at risk?
Yeah, great question. I think really team building events are the best way, and
Mm.
often, it's sort of an athletic, challenging event that you will do with organizations, and I did it at every level, from the lowest level of when I was a platoon leader, 30 as a lieutenant with 32 soldiers, all the way up to 126,000 soldiers. And you create an event where it's difficult, it's tough, it's not impossible, and the standard kind of has to be where folks get done, and you can't have it be something that's like life threatening, right? That wouldn't
Right.
work. So you have to be careful there. So you have to have but you create an event where it's very tough, and they'll know they've been through a tough event, uh, but yet they can do it. They're going to fail during the event. They're going to succeed in the end. You learn from it, and you grow together, very, very close, and you build that trust. And it can be anything from I've done. They'll have leadership obstacle courses they have, to high wire events where it's just at that height, afraid of heights, and you're up now, you're LinkedIn and it's safe, but you're pushing people on the edge, and you're working it. And those are the type things that I remember going through that with a unit prior to deploying to combat. And every time I would see the individuals that went through the team building event, we'd be in a tough situation. They'd say, "Hey, sir, remember when we were up in that high wire? We pulled together and we did this and we did it," and they'll go back and they'll remember that trust built, and they'll remember they were pushed to
Mm.
their limit, and they'll appreciate that they've been there, and gives them confidence for later. So that's easier to do in the military. Obviously, with the physical, it's a little harder to do in business, but I believe you can do it in business, and you end up doing a little bit different events, maybe not quite as physically demanding, but challenging events and team building. And you just have to think about it and work it to do it right, to develop leaders. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, getting people out of that comfort zone collectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then creating that thing they can draw from. Looking forward to the future of your current organization and past, like where's kind of the future you see, as organizations evolve, and how do we continue to develop and mentor other leaders?
Whew, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of different ways, but are there certain,
I
you
took
know,
one.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
the Army is an amazing team. I was very, very proud to be on. I think it's the greatest team in the world, and there are other great teams, of course. But I think one thing that surprised me is on any team I've seen, again, business team, sports team, military team, you know, the leadership principles and characteristics are the same. The outcomes, one may be you lose money versus lives or something, so different outcomes and stuff, but very, very similar. But it's always surprised me that there usually, when I see challenges in an organization, it's a lack of communication, a lack of trust, and it's because the individuals, again, in any of those fields, they don't take the time to build that team and to build subordinates. It takes time. It's it's challenging, and I would tell you that sometimes you'd be like, "Oh, gee, I'm mentoring somebody busy as can be at work, and they've got a challenge, and they're, hey, can you help with this?" And I talk to this, and sometimes you'll be like, "Oh boy, I'm so," but then you got to realize, hey, wait a minute. I wouldn't be here if someone hadn't mentored me,
Mm,
and really have to pay it forward, if you will, to the next generation. But unfortunately, I don't see that as the norm,
mm,
kind of the exception. And so therefore, I think, if you can look at the best organizations that you see, again, in any of those fields, they take the time and they do that. A lot of mentorship, leader development within the organization. And the ones that are struggling don't. They don't
mm.
take. And I do fear as we're going forward, I don't have a crystal ball, but again, everybody wants the neat and easy solution. And you find, oftentimes the right mentorship. Can it be done virtually? Yeah, it's a little harder if you don't have a relationship. Can it be done over the phone? Yeah, well, if you have a relationship established, but it really takes face to face and a lot of effort and your time, I mentioned earlier. And you can do that virtually. You can do that, and social media and stuff was my, but not as well. And I just see people are doing more and more, less and less face to face. And, so it's really, I think that's going to be a challenge. The other thing I think is because of so much information and so much access to information that people have and just take it for granted, you can Google anything now, right? And, because of that, I think, we, um, we see that there's this over reliance on it, and to the point sometimes of not interacting with others, and that makes it tough to build trust and build a team. And so we just we've got to watch that, as you go in, as we move into the future. Everything can't be done by, as I was talking about, you know yes, you can leverage technology, but the smartest computer will never have the empathy of a human being or the judgment in certain situations of a human being. I'm not saying we shouldn't leverage them and shouldn't use them, and I'm all
Right.
for technology, but you just have to watch. I see this more and more push and trend towards technology is going to do it all. I don't think so. It's not going to build the trust needed in a team, in the best organizations.
Yeah, and that's well said. We've seen that same thing in sports with the swing of baseball teams all going to Moneyball, and then realizing, hey, the data, that's not everything. There's got to be the balance, between the two, of using information to cut through some of the noise. But then at the end of the day, there has to be a strong culture of people in place.
Yeah, no question. And the data is important, but often one of these coaches you'll see with their sheet and the data, the analytics tell them do this.
Yeah,
But they don't measure the heart aspect of that and
yeah, yeah. The
men
intuition.
situation. And I think instinct still plays. I just found, as a leader in any field, instinct is really key. You will know what to do based on your experience before you know why, and that sounds crazy, but I do
No.
remember year of combat at the brigade level. I had about, normally a brigade's about 5,000, but I had like 12,000 soldiers for a year. They increased in size because we were up in Mosul, Iraq, and a tough situation. And we were very, very successful defeating Al Qaeda. And the overwhelming amounts of information uh, made it a challenge, but you had to rely on instinct. I think it was 63 instinctive decisions I made. And I tracked them because someone had told me how to go with your instinct is key. And that's easy in peacetime when lives aren't at stake. But when lives are at stake, going with your instinct, you almost feel guilty because you know it's the right thing to do, but you don't quite know why. But I will tell you, it makes all the difference in the world to go with your instinct. And only a couple times I let the staff talk me out of an instinctive decision. Fortunately, no lives were lost, but I still wish I'd have done those that they talked me out of would have worked
Hmm.
out. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think this has been so insightful. I think I always like to kind of summarize for listeners at least the takeaways I'm hearing. I mean, one is how important it is to empower uh, your subordinates to make decisions and know your people.
Right.
I think the second piece is the ways that you found that to be helpful is to build in really difficult team building activities that allow people to draw from that experience. And then the last one, which I think is probably the most important in this era of tech and data, you have to invest time.
Yeah.
You have to invest time to develop the trust, the communication, and there's no shortcuts to that piece. You know,
Right.
you really have to invest the time to create that mentorship, to create those leaders that are going to be able to make those decisions.
No, that's a great summary. Impressive. I didn't think you were paying attention. You know?
No, I mean it's fascinating, and I think the instinctive piece, again, just to that last point, it takes time to develop those instincts,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I mean, yes, there are, sometimes it's frustrating when you're climbing up the ladder. You're like, well, geez, I know I can do this guy's job, but the experience helps you a lot.
Hmm.
And saying that, some people can't get it faster in different ways, but experience helps a lot. Another final piece of that, I would think, of that puzzle there is that I've just found also that today, over the last 15 years and continuing to grow even stronger, uh, the younger generation requires a buy-in like never before. Uh,
Agree.
big on buy-in. So that empowerment you talked about, that building trust and building the team, that all leads to a buy-in where, when they're empowered, and you work with them, you don't just, everything doesn't come from up higher. Here you go, do this. Don't ask me why. It doesn't work so much. When I was younger, again, a long time ago, just as a lieutenant, I'd be told something, I wouldn't question it. I'd just do it. I kind of, even if it was dumb, okay, must be a reason. They kind of know, and but that doesn't happen anymore. When
Yeah.
I was four-star general, what's the highest rank in the military you can get today, and I wouldn't have talked to a general when I was a captain or a younger officer. It's like, I just kind of, I'd listen, I'd learn, but heck, when I was serving in 2019, I retired. I'd have privates come up to me, General, why are we doing this? What's going on here? What's going, and I welcomed it, and they did. I really, that showed the trust was there. Felt they could do that, but I was always amazed because I would never have done it. But
Yeah.
for that buy-in, and if you do it right and form that team, and they're involved in all that, and they're empowered, there is buy-in in the mission. Again, whether that's a military mission or whether that's in business or sports, uh, it's going to make a difference. Buy-in is very, very important. And I think you see that, and again, in successful organizations, there is a buy-in, and people understand why they're doing what they're doing, why it makes a difference. They have a pride, and they're empowered and trusted, and they buy into the overall. You see that the best of the best businesses, units, teams have that.
Yeah, and I've seen that, on the physician side, patients come in with a printed
Yeah,
Dr. Google report of their symptoms, right? And they want to know why you're coming to your conclusion in this treatment plan. Whereas, yeah, 20 years ago, you know, doctors like generals, if you said it, that's what I'm doing. Now it's like, well, I want to know why.
yeah.
Should we be doing this? And tell me why we're not doing that.
It must drive you a little bit crazy.
Yeah. Well, you got to get used to it, and I think as leaders, it makes you better because you
Yeah,
do have to defend and you defend the decision. Um,
yeah,
and certainly everyone's valuable, but there's a lot more questioning to your point because there's more access to information.
right. There's a book out. I think it's Simon Sinek. Start with why. He stole that from the military. There,
Yeah.
why. But whenever you can, you explain why. Sometimes you can't. You don't have time. But if you built up the right trust, they understand that when you don't have time, you've got to do something very rapidly. But when you can, you start with why, and you help get that buy-in. It makes it much, much better and builds that trust,
Hmm.
no doubt.
Well said. Well, thank you for the time today.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we could talk for another couple hours. This is fun stuff, and it's it is I don't think there's anything more rewarding than when you develop and put a lot of effort into mentorship and empowering others, and then they succeed. You get more out of that than any success you'll ever have yourself. I
Hmm.
guarantee. To see those you worked with and mentored succeed is really just incredibly. gratifying experience, and nothing like it. And it kind of goes along with selfless service to others. There's nothing better, and so I feel fortunate you get that in the military, and certainly in the Army you get that. And I feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to be on such an amazing team for such a long time, and now to be able to help them what we can as a nonprofit, looking to help and support, educate, inform, and connect America with their Army. So, yeah, it's been enjoyable. Thanks, Phil. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and yeah, and hopefully you feel the impact beyond the Army as some of your subordinates are now serving in business, and some are on our team, and they've been incredibly impactful, kind of carrying those values and principles beyond the Army.
Yeah, and you've got two unbelievable non-commissioned officers, senior non-commissioned officers, sergeants major, that are just amazing leaders and a great example. I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't know a business out there that couldn't use incredible leader like you've got, and our senior enlisted and non-commissioned officers are amazing, and they are what make us the best Army in the world and the envy of every other Army, because we can so much, and they're so and so yeah, the good news is, like, more and more businesses are realizing that, and grabbing these guys as they retire and for a second career in the military, and they're really helping across the board. So smart of you to bring them on board, and I know you're glad you did. I'm sure.
Absolutely, absolutely.